What's good, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and is presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, and that is One Pie Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at ProAnt. No underscores there, just PROANT. Before we dive fully into this episode, bit of housekeeping announcement. We have moved. As you can clearly see, different background, different little setup we got going on here. You will continue to see changes as we go forward and things get fully furnished and set up and moved over. So before anybody, any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns about that, as always, though, I made sure to make sure the tree was here and in its full form and luster. Also got an adorable little cat and a little pink little jack-o'-lantern there for Halloween. Housekeeping done. In this episode of Disguise Coverage, we will be diving into a Buffalo Bills bye-week checklist, fixes, focuses, areas of concern, areas for potential improvement, how... I know there's a lot of comments. This one just got me real quick. It's from K-Amor. You said the tree isn't on fire. It doesn't reflect the state of the team. Well done. Oh, thank you very much, William. Said the tree survived the move. Congratulations on the new place. The tree almost didn't. I was very nervous for it in transit, but I took extra special care of it, and it came through pretty clean. So, yeah, thank you for that. RJ says we have the tree. That's all we need. I appreciate that. So not an ideal state for the Buffalo Bills. Back-to-back losses, and not only the losses themselves, but I think the way that the losses came about, starting with the Patriots and then this game against the Falcons, two performances that are not ideal, two performances that really show potential vulnerabilities on both sides of the ball from a schematic standpoint, from a personnel standpoint. Several of them I'm pretty frustrated with. I'm trying to go into this episode very level-headed because a lot of the frustrations that I have with the team and some of the vulnerabilities they have are things that we talked about on the show a multitude of times during the offseason, right? Certain areas, certain archetypes that they look towards at certain position groups, certain philosophies or identities they have on each side of the ball or specific sides of the ball. It seems like those, issues have really kind of come to a head the past couple of weeks. Now, that doesn't mean they can't fix them. It doesn't mean those won't be issues going forward, but there are several points I think that will be made in this episode that a lot of people could have seen coming, that a lot of people may have predicted. And so to see them come to fruition in the annoying fashion that they have come to fruition is frustrating in a multitude of ways. So we're going to dive into those points. As I mentioned in the chat earlier, this show is always very engagement focused. I like to make it about the live chat as much as possible. So questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything and everything that you folks have on your mind as I try to recenter the camera there. Put it into the live chat. Super chats, as always, get priority because I respect the monetary donation and the color attracts me from my notes. But also, again, that's how we operate here normally. But especially given the current state of the team, I know there's a lot of thoughts on the coaching staff, on the players, on Bean, on what's going to happen going forward, on what's happened in the past. So anything and everything, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, let's put it up into the chat. I'm going to lead off with some pieces from the live chat, just kind of go through, and then we'll start to get into my notes and my thoughts. We'll see how it ties into everything. I know a lot of people made comments or references to this being like a therapy session or like a venting session, but if that's what you need, feel free, have at it. And let's enjoy this Tuesday night, even though the Bills are 0-2 in the past 2 weeks, and we're less than 24 hours removed from a pretty ugly loss. Jason says, in this episode of Disguise Coverage, Ant fights off all the calls to fire the coaches and tries to have a productive conversation. I will try to do that to a degree. We'll see. James says, old man down by the docks of the city, drunk and dirty, asked me for a dime for a cup of coffee. Well played. Ooh, Cecil says, just fire the coaches or fire the GM too. Oh, I think we're going to talk about how everything kind of coalesces into one. Oh, this is incorrect. Comment here says, this team could go 0-17 and cover one would still be defending McDermott until he's finally shown the door. Then we'd get a video on why McDermott had to be fired, like we did with Dorsey. I don't know who this is in reference to. I don't think it's a reference to me. I started mentioning issues with Dorsey, the year before he was fired. I also, when he got fired, I thought he got way too much flack than he actually deserved. And then when it comes to McDermott, I've always said, like, if he goes, fine. I just don't think the grass is necessarily always greener on the other side. And I think there's a multitude of variables. I don't like when people come in and just, make blanket statements about the brand. Like everybody thinks the same way and sees things the same way. People are doing that on Twitter to me too. This is, I get you all have frustrations, but don't try to just lash out at one person and not treat them as an individual, but to each their own. Have fun. Do you. Joey says, last week, I only needed a therapy session. This week, I might need you to institutionalize me for 24 days. My goodness. We're not playing good right now. Let's keep going. Bob says, I've decided to eliminate tea and coffee as a beverage of choice for tonight and opted to pop open a bottle of rubbing alcohol. Cecil, this is brutal. Cecil says, sad are the days that watching the Giants is more enjoyable than watching the Bills. Is this a sign of the apocalypse? Pops Mafia, what's up, Pops? Hope you're doing well. Pops says, fix this in all caps. Joey showing some love for the tree. Appreciate you. Follow-up comment here. That says, Ant, what's it going to take for McDermott to get fired? This is the same person who kind of blanketed statement. And I see that scroll down there. It's in reference to the entire Cover One crew in general. Cool. I don't necessarily think the same way as everyone else, so I would appreciate it if you treated me as me and not just cog in the wheel or a spoke in the wheel, because I think I operate a little differently. Thank you. Appreciate William. He says Cover One is not a monolith. Appreciate that. I will go back to your other question though. I'm Sabbath. Ant, what's it going to take for McDermott to get fired? We've talked about that on the show at times. We talked about it in the offseason. I've talked about it on other shows. I don't know, because I think from a Terry Pagula standpoint, he's earned a good amount of rope, him and Brandon Beam, with what they've built here, what they've done. And I also think just from a pragmatic standpoint, I understand the big picture is to win the Super Bowl. And this is what I've always said on McDermott. I'm going to continue to say it now. For me personally, the wheels would really have to fall off, kind of how they've been the past couple of weeks. I would need to see a multitude of things that show there is a failure on an execution level and a schematic level, but also from like a cultural or a discipline level. So continuing to have pre-snap penalties, continuing to play sloppy, continuing to look lackluster in their execution and in their energy, continuing to just falter from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint. I would really have to start to see a lot of things erode. And for me, I think that because I recognize the goal is to win the Super Bowl, but to win the Super Bowl, and I think this is the tough spot, you still have to get to the dance. So it is good that you're so strong in the regular season and winning the AFC East in theory kind of every year and getting to be one of the final four or final two teams in the conference. And then it becomes that question of, okay, when is that not good enough anymore? And when is it you have to get over the hump? And I recognize that we want this team to get over the hump, and every team wants to get over the hump. It's just a lot easier said than done. Again, the odds of your one team winning the Super Bowl versus the field, the odds are always with the field. And, you might be able to be like, yeah, but what about the Kansas City Chiefs who seem to go to the Super Bowl every year? For me, it would really have to take a large scale erosion of this team. And also a lot of it for me is personnel choices and archetypes that they make. And I don't know how much of that is McDermott influence or Brandon Beane influence. And I don't think anyone really knows that. So it's hard to parse those two things. As I said in the intro of the show, and as I've said throughout the offseason, again, even though you want to shout from the rooftops that I'm a person apparently who will always defend McDermott no matter what, and probably Brandon Beane at some point, which I don't do blindly or as kind of as a cure-all. I don't know. I have issues with some of the schematic elements of this team and some of the personnel, the roster building elements. And I don't know which one of those is necessarily Beane versus McDermott. So I don't know if firing McDermott cures or quells those. You also could fire McDermott and get a much worse head coach. You could all of a sudden plummet and fall apart, or you could finally get over the mountaintop. I think there's an equal chance of either happening. So I think it's very much a risk reward. Colin says, will we be doing Fire McDermott ornaments this Christmas? I think for some, those already are probably in circulation and existence. RJ says, unfortunately, I feel like this team is fundamentally broken. I don't think they are talented enough or smart enough to overcome the systemic issues they have. I will say this. I think smart enough, is somewhat subjective. I think it's hard to kind of necessarily detail out or dig out the players' intelligence levels or processing levels, even though you can see some things at times. I think from a talent standpoint, I think what started to show, especially these past couple of weeks with the injuries, I don't think this is an overly talented team. I don't really think it has been in the Bean and McDermott era. They've had strong players or good players, and they've had some all pros. But right now, I don't necessarily think this team is loaded with a bunch of like A tier or S tier type of players. They very much are a team that everybody does their job, the quote unquote, everybody does their 111th. But I think they're a team that is really built with a lot of like B- to B+ players, which can be fine, right? But if a couple of those guys go down, now you have to rely more on individuals. And I don't think they necessarily have the individuals that can consistently overcome the scheme, that can consistently win matchups that are, ISO ball players where it's just like clear it out, let them go to work, do their thing. I don't think they really have those guys on this roster. And so when the depth starts to get eaten away at and the responsibility and reliability starts to get eaten away, you start to see those questions about the talent start to come to the forefront. Arthur says, who would have thought that Bosa would be our healthiest defender through the first 6 games? I don't even think you should jinx that. Cecil says, question, what do you think about moving Bernard to safety to play next to Bishop? I got asked this question on Twitter earlier. For me, absolutely not. I don't think he has the movement. I'm going to talk about him in a bit this episode. I don't know what's going on with him in coverage this year, but he's regressed. But even in this game, I don't know if he's not healthy. And this was before he got banged up and had to leave the game. His movement is just not there. He looks like he's laboring a bit, like he's hampered a little bit. But even in general, I don't think he has the movement to play safety, let alone having to see the game from depth, from that vantage point, from that responsibility and assignment standpoint. Is a completely different world. So I would not be a fan of that move. I understand kind of the thought process behind it, but I'm not. I can't get there at all. Comment here saying, it's weird when we win, our defense is giving our offense no room for error, while our losses have our defense start to lock them up and our offense can't get it done. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of complementary football, and it's super annoying. Pop says a safety can be very athletic, but if he doesn't know where to go and can't tackle, then what does it matter? I feel like that's a Cole Bishop reference, but we will see. Jose, I should say, says opinions on making Joshua Palmer and Shakir wide receiver 1 and 2. Keon is just not looking good at all. I think from a depth chart standpoint and from a usage standpoint, yeah, I get like Shakir is kind of the 3, but I think Khalil Shakir is wide receiver 1 on this team, and he's pass catching option 2 behind Dalton Kincaid. The issue is the type of offense that they've built schematically that won Josh Allen an MVP last year, that put up a ton of record numbers last year, is built more for bigger bodied wide receivers. It's built more for condensed formations, running the football, putting defenses into run pass conflict. The more you inject Khalil Shakir into that, the more that goes away a little bit. I think Khalil Shakir is built more for a spread type of offense. Even it can be a power spread type of deal, but you don't want him banging, and inserting on duo and having to crack on dudes a bunch. You want him working out of the slot. You want to get him in space. You want to get him the ball on those, pass tags outside where they have numbers advantage or an angles or space advantage, and Allen can spit the ball out to him and kind of let him do work in space. I think what's more so frustrating is not necessarily that Palmer and Keon are wide receiver 1 and 2. I think it's more of the schematics of not being able to get Khalil Shakir consistently involved, getting him into a rhythm and taking advantage of his skill set. And to your point, yeah, Palmer did look good yesterday before he went down. Really unfortunate. RJ says it's really just sad. This team has consistently declined every year since 2021. I think that was our shot. I'm not sure if we will get another one. Apparently I'm in the depression phase. 2021 was the 13 seconds year, right? Everything kind of blurs into one another. I said it when they lost to Kansas City. I'm still saying it now. I don't know if they beat the Bengals. I know they would have been home in the AFC Championship against the Bengals. I don't know if they beat Cincinnati, but I understand your point. Oh, another comment. What are your thoughts on our routes for Keon? Are we using him how he was in college, or is route stats different? More slants for this man. I think it's just my big thing with Keon Coleman, and then this might not even directly answer your question here. My thing with Keon Coleman is he was a player that needed time on task. He was a raw player, and I've said this on the show, and everybody and their mother knows this at this point. He, played basketball at Michigan State. He was, new to football. He's still learning the game, yada, yada, all that stuff, right? He's a high ceiling player, lower floor, yada, yada, all that kind of stuff, right? He needs time on task. He needs to work on the finer points of his game. He needs to work on his releases and his route stems and his route running and breaks and deception and pacing and all that stuff. And I think he has made improvements in the majority of those areas this year. His game against New Orleans a couple weeks ago, he had several releases and routes in that game that were really crisp, really deceptive. He had a nice rocker step on a deep out. He had a couple good releases where he shook clean at the line and paired some technicality with the size and the frame. The biggest thing with Keon Coleman is he's a guy who needed to develop, and he needed time on task to do so. And that's fine, but it's a little less fine when you need him to be wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 on a team that's trying to win the Super Bowl. That's not ideal for a guy who needs to develop and for a guy who needs time on task. That's asking a lot of a guy who needs refinement and who needs coaching and who needs to develop. So I'm not saying that's not possible, but I never thought year 2 Keon Coleman was going to be this stud. We're not going to know who Keon Coleman is until probably year 4 because of how much football he needs to play and the learning that he needs to have. And so my thoughts on our routes for him are, I feel like they ask him what they think he's comfortable of run with, or what they think he's best suited to run. He doesn't have the full route tree in his package yet. I don't think his stem work is necessarily there. So they use him on more physical starting routes, or routes that are more dependent on his physicality, like back shoulder throws that allow him to kind of play as a power forward, some quick slants at the line where he can use his body to kind of get his body and box dudes out. They're tapping in more to what his traits are at this stage, because I don't think he's necessarily there where they want him, where they would need him to be, or where fans need him to be. And I don't necessarily think that's all Keon's fault, because drafting him last year, he was a project. So you're drafting a guy that was a project, but needing him to be an established person in year 2. It's not setting him up for failure, but I don't think it's setting him up for success. Charles says, do we still have an outside wide receiver problem? Bills ran mostly one wide receiver sets in the second half to get back in the game, not even trying to pretend to threaten the outside numbers. I do think they have questions at wide receiver. I don't think defenses fear passes outside the numbers or deep. I think the Bills are going to have to work to do that. The Bills, again, when you look at the wide receiver position, they're built for what this offense was last year and going into this year. Condensed formations, winning with alignment, winning with personnel, winning with formation. They're not built to go 11 personnel or 10 personnel and chuck it 30 to 40 times a game and sling it all over the yard. They have to win with scheme and structure and a variety of things. And then sometimes the scheme and structure aren't where it needs to be. Sometimes the player execution isn't there where it needs to be. But yeah, I think they have an outside wide receiver problem if they need to chuck it all over the field. If it's just with who they are normally, I don't know why my camera's doing this. It's driving me insane. If they are who they are normally from a schematics perspective last year and this year, no, I think they're fine. But they are going to have to threaten outside. They are going to have to threaten deep. They are going to need to back up defenses at some point, which was really encouraging from the first offensive play of the game against the Falcons with that play action deep shot to Palmer. And then he goes, and then things go bad. Oh, good comment here from Pops. 2 of Atlanta's scoring drives only happened because the Bills' penalties extended the drives. Yeah, Pops DM'd me, I think, after the game or today, saying that first play of the game with the fumble from Bijan and the recovery from the Bills was kind of like the game or a huge moment. And crazy. Fair comment here from Johnny, who says, I heard today sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Yeah, it's another euphemism for coaching changes, and you don't know. Things could go sideways. The Bills could fire McDermott, fire the staff, and they could win a Super Bowl. They could fire McDermott, fire the staff, and they could go 5-12. Like, there really is, maybe not 5-12, but it really is kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Like, there's equal opportunity on both sides, and firing the staff isn't a guarantee that it finally pushes this team over the hump. What else? else? Bum, bum, ba. RJ says, smart enough. More saying that they don't have the coordinators to overcome the talent deficiency. Andy Reid nor Sean McVay is walking through that door. I think those guys are also kind of not unicorns, but those are two of the best at their position. And it's, when you get one of those guys, cool. But it's tough to get one of those guys. What else? William says, am I crazy for thinking the defense in the second half was good and having some hope about the defensive line? They blitzed more. They played more man coverage. I do think they played better in the second half. I still don't think it was great. But obviously better. They gave up, 3 points in the second half after giving up 21 in the first. We're going to talk about it as we go forward here, but they definitely played better in the second half. They changed some things up. They attacked more. They tried to take away airspace and restrict it, which is what they should have been doing more early on. Penalties definitely got in their way. And also some of the talent perspective pieces, right? Like Drake London is sweet. Bijan Robinson is sweet. It's unfortunate that they really just let those two guys house them over and over again, but it's unfortunate. Unfortunate. Charles said, I expected the defense would be a work in progress, especially with all the injuries and suspensions. The offense came back, returning everyone, and looks completely dysfunctional for long stretches. I think that's fair. Arthur says, I can think of probably 5 to 10 coaches I prefer to McDermott. The problem is that they already all have NFL jobs. Who could we realistically hire? Sarkisian, Kingsbury, man. I think that's a fair point too. I don't think McDermott's the best coach in the league, and there are coaches that I would take ahead of Sean McDermott, but like you said, they all have jobs. What I would have liked to see, a different defensive coordinator or someone who has a different philosophy to McDermott instead of being from the McDermott tree, the McDermott mindset. I really wanted Lou Anarumo to come in. I know he got jettisoned from Cincinnati and how things ended up with Cincinnati there, but I think a lot of that was more from the roster and injuries than it was Lou Anarumo. I wanted someone like that. I think they need new blood on the defensive side from a philosophy and an identity standpoint, and even from a roster building standpoint. But again, I don't know how much of that is Bean going into McDermott versus McDermott going into Bean, or them kind of feeding off of one another. I would like to see a different defensive mind running the defense. Or injecting some more influence into the defense, I should say. But to your point, yeah, there are a good handful of coaches that I would take over McDermott, but they all have jobs already, and they're not going anywhere. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe says, nothing wrong with a modest year for a project receiver, but I feel like they still have him boxed into an X role he shouldn't be in. That's fair. It goes to the power slot conversation, but then what's tough with that is like you have Shakir who lives in the slot. So then you have to get Coleman eating into some of Shakir's reps, but then you're also kind of eating into some of the formation and alignment stuff you do. It's all just, they needed an X. They needed a boundary guy. They needed a guy on the outside, and they thought that guy was Coleman. I think that's the same reason why they didn't draft Lad McConkey. I think it's, potentially a reason why they passed on Xavier Worthy. It's just, you can do that, but then you have to give that guy time to grow and time to develop as an organization and as a fan base. I think it's, again, they are lacking a bit at wide receiver for most. And so he needs to contribute more than he would as a project wide receiver, maybe on other teams. Remy says they need to stop drafting projects and just find superstars. Absolutely. But I think it's a lot easier said than done. I think you can say that for every team in the league. Yeah, frustrating. Oh, Cecil, this is a good, just mentioned real quick. He says, what was frustrating was all the Falcons blitzes 56% of the time, and yet we threw very few running back screens. They are not a good running back screen team. A lot of it is Josh Allen. It's two things. One, usually when teams attack Allen, they still kind of sit back a little bit as they come forward because they know that he could maybe step through or run by them. And so you're kind of coming up with urgency, but also playing with a little bit of control. Also, Allen is just not a good running back screen thrower. I don't know if it's the arm angles or the trajectory or the timing or the tempo of it. He's not good at screens. He hasn't been since he was a rookie. I think a lot of the failures with running back screens are due to Allen just not being good at those. And that might seem like a weird thing to say. He's just not good at them. Again, if I got to pick something for a dude not to be good at, I would probably pick that. But year after year, different coordinators, different schemes, moments, the screen game doesn't go. And I think a lot of it comes down to Allen just not being good at them. Nick, what's up, Nick? Nick says Trey is getting the Dane Jackson treatment. Major scapegoating going on with the fans, even though he played fine and was a bright spot at times. I second this to a degree. I don't think Trey's been good. I don't think Trey has been as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. And I do think he's getting blamed for things that aren't necessarily his fault. And when he does make good plays, they're completely getting overlooked and glossed over. I don't think he's been good. I'll put it out there. Like, he hasn't been locked down. He hasn't been a true CB2. I don't think he's as bad as everybody's kind of making it out to be. Lauren says, whoa, whoa, whoa. I know it's been a few weeks since I've been in here, but where are the bookshelves? Glad to see the tree is still there, though. We moved. And so it just happened this weekend. So I'm in the process of getting everything back in order in the new place. And I just haven't gotten there yet. Appreciate you noticing the attention to detail. Yeah, made sure the tree was there. And then added this little adorable cat and this jack-o'-lantern to kind of take away from things. Next week, there will be more things behind me, hopefully finished and furnished, and potentially the week after. Good eye, Lauren. Ba, 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 ba. What else? Going through, seeing comments. Arthur says, many people, you included, me, spent the offseason saying they wouldn't judge the defense until after Hoyt was ready. I'm curious what the defensive scheme looks like over the next 3-4 games. Excellent point. That is, despite my frustrations, I am, in injuries too, and this is going to be one of the main points I lead off with in a bit after we finish getting through the chat here to start. I am kind of playing devil's advocate and saying, like, okay, let's see what they look like when they're whole. Let's see what they look like with Ed Oliver back and Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi and TJ Sanders and the whole cast of dudes up there, right? Let's see what they look like when they don't have to rely on depth guys or guys from the practice squad. Like, Jordan Phillips should not be playing in an NFL game right now. That should not happen, but he had to play major snaps the past couple of weeks, and especially last night with Daquan Jones going down in warmups. So I am kind of keeping that in the back of my mind. I would like to see what they look like in their final form in theory, and I do think Hoyt opens up a lot of schematics for them. I think what's more worrisome is Michael Hoyt coming into the picture and Ed Oliver coming back and Ogunjobi coming back, even though I think Ogunjobi is going to have some issues defending the run, and that's not going to help the interior. The guys returning up front should help the front. It's not going to help them with space and coverage, although maybe it dictates some of the different coverages they play and allows them to kind of marry things a little bit better. But their run defense, I think, is still going to be an issue. The way they're built from a roster perspective and the spine is still going to be an issue. Their missed tackling is still going to be an issue. The safety play is still going to be an issue. So I am holding out before giving final resolution. I don't know what word I was going for there until I give final kind of thoughts there. But I am frustrated. Fair point from Swin, who says letting opposing teams score 23 and 24 the last 2 games. I would have signed up for that. That's fair. Joey says, if you could make one move, what would you do? Oh, like anything? Or does it have to be realistic? If it's anything, I'm going to keep it in terms of anything, but also somewhat realistic. I'm getting Jeffrey Simmons from the Titans. That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Ben. Ben says I was reserving judgment. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was falling apart. Jason says, did you move because of the motorcycle noise? No, but that's funny. I'm not even going to say it and jinx it, but where we are now, it is extremely peaceful and extremely quiet. That is super funny. Well done. Well done, Jason. Did you move? That's really good. Oh, that's funny. Remy says there must be a problem with the strength and conditioning program. It isn't just recently, it's every year. We're made of glass. What can be done? You know what's funny is they were one of the least injured teams several years ago, and now the last couple, it's really kind of caught up to them a little bit. I think it's really just the type of injuries they get. Sometimes it's the dudes they get. Sometimes guys are just prone to certain injuries. I don't necessarily think it's something in the water. I think a lot of times injuries are just kind of unfortunate, unless you're like a team that plays on bad turf or bad field like the Niners did for the past several years, and everybody was getting hurt at the games at Levi, or dudes getting hurt at the MetLife field or the Lions field, stuff like that. Nice, Joe. I see your comment there about the backgrounds. That's funny. This is good for Bill too. We'll bet you the motorcycles. I like that. I like that. I like that. Oh, Kebby, do you think the Bills make any moves before the deadline? If so, which one? I always just don't expect any moves at the deadline, not because I don't think the Bills don't want to make moves. It's just hard to make trades in the NFL because a lot of times it's player for player, and that's tough. Like you don't see a lot of those deals in general. I think it's tough to make deadline deals in the NFL, especially with more wild card spots and teams thinking that they're still in the hunt. And kind of tying into Joey's thing, I would love Jeffrey Simmons. I would love a safety to replace Taylor Rapp. If Max Hairston is done for the year, I'd love to get a corner too. But then you're probably looking for a corner too that's on like a 1-year deal. Because again, ideally you want Max Hairston to start next year. So, and then also, is that corner going to be happy here? If they're trying to prove themselves and get a larger contract next year or an extended deal with someone else. So I think corner's a little murky for a deal. I'd love to get a safety. I would love to get a defensive tackle. I'd love to get a wide receiver. I'm kind of in the boat, from a contract standpoint. I'll take Chris Olave. I'll take Raheed Shaheed from New Orleans. But I haven't really started diving into guys that are available yet, just because it's just hard to anticipate moves. They always come down to the wire, and not a lot of deals happen. So if I had to bet, I don't think they'd make any, but I would like to see something at defensive tackle, corner, or wide receiver, though I think corner is the least likely. Cecil says, I am more worried about the back seven than the D-line. Walker's coming along. Yeah, Deion Walker is coming along. I do think Deion Walker is getting his play. I do think the flashes are glossing over a lot of the work in progress that he's having. I think he's ahead of schedule for what I thought. He surpassed my expectations for this year, but it's funny to put out clips and watch him get blown up or just displaced and no one comments on it. Like I'm putting out clips and showing like the Bills run defense just getting gashed and he's getting blown off the ball and there's no comment. And I do think a lot of his struggles are being glossed over because of the flashes. His flashes have been very good and are very encouraging. I don't think he's this lockdown stud dude who's arrived. A lot of the hyperbolic statements that are being made about him. But to your point, yes, I do think he is coming along. I would love to see him in a rotation with Ed and Daquan and Sanders and Ogunjobi and kind of go from there. That would be nice. Cam Moore says Myles Garrett isn't realistic. Oh, because Claude said Simmons over Myles Garrett. Yeah, there's no way they're getting Myles Garrett. I would love that, though. CT says I'm only tuned in for motorcycle noises. I like that. Andy said, would Xavier Woods from the Titans be a fit for us? I have not watched any Titans tape this year from the defensive side, so I cannot speak to that. And I'm not going to speak off of generic statements or off of others' work, so I don't know. Comments on, yep. Linebacker, safety. Tristan says, do you think Raheed Shaheed would open up the offense? I do. The only thing that would be tough is because he's not going to be at the top of the depth chart guy, he's going to be more like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type. When you put him on the field, it might be a tendency giveaway. If you're putting him on the field, it's probably because you want to send him deep, and then defenses are going to be like, okay, odds are he's probably going deep, and then they'll counteract for that a little bit. That's why a couple weeks ago I mentioned you need speed, but more towards the top of the depth chart. You need it built into your wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. So that way it's not necessarily a tendency giveaway. They could be blocking. They could be running deep. They could be running over. They could be running a variety of routes instead of necessarily kind of it being a schematic or a tendency giveaway. Tank Ninja said, whom amongst the Bills D-line doesn't get blown off the ball? Rousseau, Ed Oliver, especially for being smaller. Daquan Jones doesn't get moved too much. I think AJ Epinesa holds his own. And I think Bosa holds his own. Trying to make sure I don't miss anyone else. It's really in the spine more than anything. And some dudes at the second level as well, which is unfortunate. Dave says at this point, just add talent and speed. I'm open to most moves. I think that's fair. Jose says, do you think Palmer can consistently beat man coverage in the event we don't trade for new wide receiver? Yes. I just think he can beat more man coverage more in the underneath and the intermediate, more so than as a deep threat or as a burner. But yes, I think he can separate against man in the underneath and the intermediate. Swin says, I'm speculating, but Josh seems bored of the offense and is itching for more big time throws. You know what's funny is I don't, it's hard to tell. Again, you even mentioned you're speculating. I feel like Josh corrected himself so much to playing efficient and taking what the defense gives him that he's almost kind of like rewired his brain to not take the deep shots. And I think that's part of kind of the whole big time throw thing, or the deep shots. I'm assuming that's what you mean by big time throws. I think it's a little bit of Allen really drilling down on being efficient. I think a little bit of it is Brady's offense. And I think a little bit of it is not necessarily having true deep threats or burners. And that's those type of guys. But yeah, I think he made such a concerted effort to be more efficient and take what the defense gave him and not go for blood every single throw like he used to. I think when you make that much of a concerted effort, I think it changed the way he played a little bit. And it won him an MVP last year, so kudos to him and to the Bills offense. But I think he does have to – I think he has to force the issue a little more. I think he has to be told, like, hey, take the shot. Look for the shot. More so than, oh, the shot might be there. That's cool. I'm just going to dump it down for 6 or 7 yards on first down. Which isn't terrible. But, yeah, I think he's kind of rewired his brain a little bit there. But that's a fair comment. This is good for Ralph, who says, how many Panthers will be on the Bills playing back to Buffalo after their next game? Ooh. Oh, question here. Do we have a speedy wide receiver on the practice squad? Not that I would necessarily inject into the lineup regularly. And then Penny, for your thoughts on Sam Franklin as a safety. Like him as a special teamer, I haven't watched his safety tape. I would be more open to Jordan Hancock getting an opportunity than Franklin at this point. Also, very, very, very small sample size. Jordan Poyer moved a lot better last night than I thought he did all of last year in Miami. That's also an option. I don't love that option. I thought he was losing his legs his last year in Buffalo, and then he looked worse last year. But he looked better than I thought from a movement standpoint. And from a reading the game and understanding standpoint, he's the best guy they have back there. Safety's really worrisome. We're going to get into it. I'm worried. Bill says, what would you think about a 5-wide spread fully across the field, short yardage alignment where the defense can only put 6 in the box? Josh could just pick a spot like Tom Brady used to remarkably well. You could work that. I would also take some more design Josh Allen runs off that. Get him in some, QB draws, some sneaks, or not sneaks, but QB draws, some QB power, some read option stuff. I really think they got to start to dip into the bag a little bit. Not necessarily now, because it's only going to be week 8 when they start playing again, but start to dip into that come December and January. All right. Really good thoughts from the chat. As you have more things, keep putting it up into the comments here. Oh, actually, there's something I wanted to get to. Somebody asked me about the schedule and who I realistically thought the over-under. There it is. If you look at the rest of our schedule, what's your over-under for wins? You know what's funny is I'm always terrible with what the schedule is, but I always think this is fun. I feel like people in the chat like doing this too. Realistically, so you've got Carolina. I hate doing this because I'm superstitious, but you've got Carolina, Kansas City, Miami, Tampa, Houston, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, New England, Cleveland, Philly, New York. I'm not going to say these things out loud because I'm too superstitious. Realistically, I think they should have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think they realistically, at a minimum, should have another 7 wins. I think you could make the case that they could get to 9-ish or 10. I think Kansas City is a toss-up. I think Tampa Bay is a toss-up. I think they should beat Houston, but that might be a little tougher than their record indicates come November. Pittsburgh, they should beat, but that could be wonky. And then Philly, I think it's a fair toss-up. Too superstitious to make any other comments about that, but I like that. Okay, Amore says the pauses are giving it away. No, well, kind of, yeah. Yeah. Hold on. No, I did not. Nick says, guys, Ant just said he wants Poyer starting at safety. I did not say that. I said he looked better than I thought he would last night against the Falcons. Also, I don't really love any of their safety combinations. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Their angles from depth, I'm frustrated with safety. I don't even really want to talk about it. It's one of my points here tonight, but I'm going to talk about it, I guess. All right, let's start. So Bills bye week checklist, fixes and focus. The first, I did not say I want Jordan Poyer at safety. I said he looked better than I thought. And I said he's their best combination of guy who can move a little bit and knows the defense and the system. But fair. All right. Now, I know, but people don't know. So people could join this show right now and see your comment and be like, "Oh, Ant says he's all about like Jordan Poyer." Okay, this just jumping it out of this is the new motorcycle driving by. I like this a lot. Hold on. I'm gonna start to go over things. Oh, Rebby says, thank you for answering our questions. Amazing you're staying so calm. I'm always super calm with this, really. It takes a lot. I also, too, I'm obviously a Bills fan. I'm a football fan more so than I am a Bills fan. And so I'm still able to appreciate things from a schematic perspective, good or bad. And then also, honestly, a lot of me died with 13 seconds. I grew up through the drought like a lot of us. And I thought it would take a lot to kind of break me. And not that it completely broke me. 13 seconds really, I thought they had it. I thought that was like the greatest game ever. I was all into it. And then out of nowhere, the rug got pulled under me. And I didn't think, like, and I grew up having the rug pulled out from under me, right? Like the Music City Miracle and everything we know, right? The Music City Miracle, that stupid game against the Steelers backups when like an unknown Willie Parker and then Tommy Maddox beat the Bills in the last regular season game at home, where if the Bills would have won, they would have gone to the playoffs. I wasn't really around for wide right, but I obviously knew the 4 straight Super Bowls, all these things. So I didn't really think it was possible for the rug to get pulled out from under me because I just always expected that to happen. 13 seconds kind of broke me. It's hard for me to get like that emotionally invested ever again because a part of me died that day. Oh, good times. Good times. Yeah, man, it's tough. And then especially too, like me being a Red Sox fan, like growing up as a Red Sox fan and a Bills fan, oh man, it was brutal. And I've been lucky that the Red Sox have 4 World Series in my lifetime. Anthony says, I still wake up with cold sweats with 13 seconds. Yeah, man, not great. Not great. Yeah, 13 seconds. A little part or a big part of me died that day. And I'm always so superstitious. Like you guys know that, and girls know that. I'm very superstitious. And I remember my wife saying like, oh my God, they're going to win. And I was like, you can't say that. You never know what could happen. But I remember in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, they probably got that. Squib this kick or kick it short. Let them bleed the clock. I know Butker has a leg and Mahomes has an arm, but they should be good. They should be good here. I believed it. And I never let myself believe like that. And then they played 75 yards deep and the Chiefs moved the ball and moved like 50 yards in the blink of an eye. And we lost. And I cried and I died inside. Good times. All right. Bye week checklist, fixes and focuses as we all get sad and go down a memory lane that we don't want to go to. Oh, JJ says, I was there since wide right. Yeah, man. Again, for a lot of us too, who have family members who grew up as Bills fans or in Buffalo, like I grew up around all the adults talking about the Super Bowl years, like guys who went to Vietnam and war stories, and my uncles and aunts and grandparents all talking about like, oh, I was there for so-and-so, and all my family's from Buffalo. So I got family talking about seeing Jack Kemp and seeing the AFL Bills, and then everybody talking about what they started to see in the 80s and then the 90s Bills, and family that had season tickets for forever. And it just all builds and builds. So you understand the pain that comes with being a Bills fan and comes with being in the city. And I didn't think that I could be broken in 13 seconds. Oh, Bob says I lived through the 0-for-70s versus Miami. He says, spare me. That's fair. Woo. Man, that's rough. I just want one. Just give me one Super Bowl. That's it. I don't care. They don't need to be a dynasty. Just give me one. I just want one. First piece I want to talk about here when it comes with the bye week checklist, fixes, and focus. I do want to mention the caveat. I mentioned it earlier. The injuries, I do think, have played a big role, in addition to kind of the guys being suspended and being off this team. And not just to kind of give them an out or give them an excuse, but when you are a team that isn't loaded with elite talent, I don't think this is a bad team. Obviously, they're not a bad team. They were multitude of people, Super Bowl picks. They have great Super Bowl odds. They still do. I still think they'll right the ship and largely be fine. But when you're a team that doesn't necessarily have the talent advantage week in and week out and doesn't necessarily have stars or studs at a multitude of spots or even premium positions, when you're a team that's built more on depth and having good football players, if you have multiple good football players out, everything starts to become more noticeable because you don't have the top end talent that's able to mitigate that loss and able to kind of, pull everybody up by their bootstraps a little bit and kind of make things happen. So when you've got, again, all the injuries and the suspension, so you've got Hoyt out, you've got Ogunjobi out, you've got Daquan Jones out, you've got TJ Sanders out, you've got Matt Milano out, you've got Dalton Kincaid out, you've got Josh Palmer out, you've got, even Curtis Samuel, like you've got all these guys who are out. I do think that would impact the picture for anybody. When you have a multitude of starters or top of the depth chart players who are out, that's going to, influence anybody. Hairston is a good one too. Then Dorian Strong goes down. So your outside corner depth is being tested in all these forms and fashions. So I do think there are questions to be had when it comes to what will this team look like if they're in full form and in their final form. So I will say with everything, kind of coming out of the bye week, let's see what they look like with the suspension guys coming back, maybe guys coming back from injury, and kind of putting that into perspective for everything here. Again, I'm not giving them a pass. I'm not saying, everything is fine because your guys were injury. But yeah, injuries definitely play a role here, and it affects the sample size and the variables. The next piece I want to talk about, the zone coverage for this Bills team. The metrics don't really weigh it out, which is understandable to a degree, given some of the teams they played and the success that they've had. But when they go with zone coverage, a lot of their zone coverage this year, and it was evident early on in the Atlanta game, a lot of it is just spot drop zone coverage. And when I say spot drop zone coverage, what I mean there is you're kind of like Madden coverages where you're just, okay, you're supposed to get to 10 or 12 yards, at this spot, you turn around, hitch up, or, your eyes are on the quarterback. You need to drop, get to your spot, look at the quarterback. You see a lot of times where guys in this defense are just essentially kind of covering grass. They need more man coverage, as Louis Riddick said 95 times last night on the broadcast. Nate Orlovsky said it too. I would like to see more man coverage, but they don't necessarily have the horses for that, considering, Trey is going to struggle with certain matchups. Now, that being said, I do think Trey held up better last night than he got credit for. Him against Kyle Pitts should have been an easy mismatch for Pitts every day. And Trey kind of held his own a bit with Pitts. I thought it was a really soft pass interference call they called on him. I thought Pitts made contact with him, and they should just let that rock, especially considering A.J. Terrell didn't get called for something later similar against Keon Coleman. Also, I love A.J. Terrell. He's awesome. But I don't think they necessarily have the dudes to play man, but they need to work in more man principles. And for me, that means more match coverage, more rules-based coverages. They just cannot continue to play spot drop zone. They are getting shredded and getting eaten alive with it, especially in the second level. Tying into that, Terrel Bernard has been rough this year. He's getting blown up against the run. He's getting put on his butt. He's not getting off blocks. He's not beating blocks. He's still shooting some gaps every now and again, but not at the rate that he normally does, or we tend to see him do. I wonder, again, well, now we know that he's hurt because of, him leaving the game last night. But just kind of leading into every game this year, it just didn't look like he was 100% healthy. I don't know if that's to blame for his movement and coverage, but he just does not look good in space. Doesn't really look good in coverage. I know he had that great interception against Miami, but he has not looked good, kind of dropping deeper into coverage. His depth has been questionable, and also his awareness just seems off. There's a route last night. I was talking to Kendall Mursky about this, friend of the show, Kendall Mursky, where Drake London runs an in-breaker, and one of their receivers runs vertical, and I forget what the coverage is, but Bernard, it's play action. Bernard comes up to honor the play action. Then he turns around and he sees the number one receiver going vertical. So he's gone. And then he looks at Drake London, and then he turns completely around, looks back at Penix, gives his back to London, loses sight of London, and Penix just fires it in there. For me, I want to see him locate London and attach to him, match him, get on him. especially in that instance where there's no other eligibles to that side. There's no one underneath. Even from a spot drop standpoint, you should be just getting to London. You don't have any threats underneath. You don't have any threats behind you. The other receiver, the number one, because he came in, London came inside and became the 2. The other receiver's gone. He took the top off, and Bishop and Benford both took him. So you don't have anything else. Just pick up London. And for some reason, he turns around, lets him get by. It's a huge completion. He did that a couple times last night. And then in his movement, he looks stiff. He doesn't look very fluid. He looks, again, hampered or injured or stiff, or I don't know if he put on more weight, and that's why he's not moving good, but he's just struggling. And I think his play is pretty reflective and a bit of a microcosm of the Bills in zone coverage this year, where it's just guys are open in the seams, guys are open in the flats, guys are open in the hook curls. I also think their safeties just get crazy amount of depth. Like usually, in certain coverages, you want to get to like 18 to 20 yards. They're starting at 18 to 20 yards. So there's just space, and they're not like creeping up or playing top down. They're staying at that and getting back even a couple more steps because they're so concerned about getting beat over the top. So there's this space between the second and third level, which means the second level defenders have to get all this depth. If you're running cover 3 or if you're running cover 2, those second level defenders have to get all this depth to make sure they stop those in-breakers from getting in behind them. And then that opens up potential check downs underneath, which is why you can check down the ball and get like 9 yards against the Bills defense. Or if the Bills have to honor that a little bit more, you can hit these chunk plays and in-breakers behind them in the intermediate. It's just really frustrating watching them play spot drop zone. Their spacing is not great. Guys are open between the second and third levels and in holes at the second level. I also think tying into that is safety play, which I'm going to talk about, in the next segment here. Actually, I might as well just talk about it now. The safety play, just Rapp has really regressed. I mentioned it. Let me look him up now. So I know all the jokes about Taylor Rapp and, friendly fire and all that and ha ha ha. Last year, he was legitimately good coming from depth and making tackles. There's a good example, the snow game against the Niners. McCaffrey breaks one, Rapp comes up, sticks him, drops him at about like 12 or 13 yards. If he doesn't make that tackle, it's a house call, it's a touchdown. Rapp did that a lot last year. For as much maligned as he is in coverage, for as much maligned as he is with the friendly fire stuff, he's been a sound tackler and a sure tackler, especially coming from depth. Not the case this year. Last year, he had a 3.6 missed tackle rate. The year before that, 4.7. All the years before that in LA, 6.3, 6.6, 8.7, 5.8. So his worst year with missed tackles was 2020 from a percentage standpoint, where he had an 8.7% missed tackle rate. The most missed tackles he's ever had in a season were 2022 and 2019, where he had 6. This year, he already has 8 missed tackles, and his missed tackle rate is 25%. That is terrible, and it's a huge regression for him. He does not have coverage chops from an athleticism standpoint. He sees the game well. I think he can read it a bit. I don't like some of the – I think some of the errors in decision-making in coverage him and Bishop are both making, so I think it's more of what they're being coached to than necessarily with them. But he has really regressed as a tackler in a multitude of forms. And I think some of it is stemming from the lack of athleticism and the lack of foot speed for him. The margin for error for him is so small with his angles to the ball because he doesn't have the best foot speed and because he doesn't have the most athleticism. So if his angles and his timing aren't on point, he's getting beat. There were some times where he, even last night, he has a run where they run outside zone to Bijan Robinson. If you're going to the offense's left, and Rapp is going with him, and he tries to chase it down from the right, and Bijan breaks through the line, and Rapp gets him. But the speed, and also with this, Bijan's a unicorn, and he's amazing. But Rapp, the angle that he gets Bijan on, he's chasing Bijan from behind. So it's Bijan going this way, Rapp going this way, and he's just more on Bijan's backside than he is into his hip and into his front to try and cut him off. And he doesn't have that margin for error. His angles have to be perfect, because if they're not, he's in a bad way. And this is a fair comment here, that the Algier touchdown was really bad, horrible angle by Rapp. The finish looked bad. I don't think the angle was necessarily terrible. He's a single high safety. So what you want to do when you're coming up to play the run, you essentially want to kind of like follow a banana path, technically, because you're a post player first and foremost. You're protecting the middle of the field. When you read run, you want to come forward and then kind of banana out. So his initial angle wasn't terrible, but the problem is Bijan started picking, or Algier picked up so much speed. Once Rap comes forward, he doesn't have that ability. Like, if he's trying to cut off somebody here, he has to beeline it and take that right angle. He doesn't have the speed to come here and then go this way and make up for it. So he got a little too far upfield and was done. Their angles, him and Bishop. I mean, Bishop has just come up flying, trying to make a play and kind of loses track of himself at times. But yeah, he and Rap have just it's been a frustrating duo to watch. I talked about it all throughout the offseason. I could make a whole episode on this. I talked about it so much at length throughout the offseason. I just don't think they complement each other well. And I don't think either of them are what the Bills need from a coverage standpoint deep. And I think that's part of the reason why both of them are playing so far back, why the spacing is so intense on the back end. It's a pairing that I don't think has an answer, because I don't think Poyer and Bishop complement each other necessarily better. I don't think Rapp and Poyer necessarily complement each other better. I think in theory, Hancock and Bishop complement each other better, or Hancock and Rapp complement each other better, but I don't think Hancock is ready from a mental standpoint and from a processing standpoint to start yet. But man, safety is ugly. And my biggest one, this is more of a focus than a fix. I don't think you can fix the safety room aside from trading for someone else and bringing someone in. I don't know how to fix the safety room. They're at a spot where, unfortunately, they kind of have to dance with who brought them. And Rapp and Bishop are the ones who brought them. And that's what they're looking at the safety spot right now. And it's concerning. This is a frustrating one for me, because a lot of the concerns that I mentioned throughout the offseason have come to fruition with this safety grouping. You're seeing the vulnerabilities in coverage with this pairing. And the one saving grace that I had was, okay, Rapp's athleticism in range isn't there, but he's such a sound tackler coming from depth. And now he's not given that. Again, 25% missed tackle rate is crazy. It would be the worst of his career by over 100%, by over 100% increase, which is crazy. And yeah, it's just really poor for a guy whose calling card was not range and was not coverage. To not have range and not have coverage and now also struggle coming from depth and making tackles in general. What do you do? What do you do? I like this from Lauren. Lauren says, I know you're saying spot drop coverage, but we need that coverage DMX saying about. Oh, you're thinking Rough Rider anthem. Stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. Oh, no. That's how Rough Riders roll. I want to go back to this comment from earlier. I made note of it. Claude says, Ant, I would think because you are a scheme guy, the Bills would drive you crazy. For example, their lack of disguising, running percentage while under center, throwing out a shotgun. Especially defensively, the Bills run a style of defense that I do not personally gravitate towards. Their philosophy and identity and roster building is not what I gravitate towards in terms of philosophy or identity or roster building. It's not what I would do if I was building a team. It's not the type of defense that I enjoy or would like to employ or deploy, I should say. But it works for them, or on the whole, it has. But that's also part of my frustration come playoff time, because the areas that I don't like in their defense are often the areas that get put under the microscope come playoff time, or against better teams from a roster standpoint, or a roster building standpoint, or an archetype standpoint, or a schematic standpoint. So that's defensively. And then offensively, the running percentage while under center or throwing out a shotgun, I know those are predictable, but I also think you can set the baseline with that and then use that against defenses. So then you get into a game and it's like, oh, hey, they're running 70% of the time when under center. And that's the game where you run it only 40% on the center of that game, and you incorporate more play action passing, or start to work in some true under center drop back stuff, which I don't think they're going to do, because not a lot of teams do that. But yeah, I think you can use that tendency against defenses and kind of make them, the whole, I think I said this last week, the whole we know what you know, and we know that you know what we know that you know. And so it's that chess match of, are they really going to throw it? Are they really going to run it out of here? Are they actually adhering to their tendency, or are they trying to flip it on its head? But overall, the defensive schematics bother me more than anything. No, I shouldn't say the schematics. Well, yeah, some of it. But the philosophies and the philosophy, identity, and archetypes that they subscribe to defensively for years frustrate me. I am not a fan of those, but again, I don't think there's any one true tried and true identity, philosophy, scheme, structure, way to build a roster. It all comes down to personal preference, but hey, you never know. I mentioned the safeties. Safeties are really frustrating. The safeties are really frustrating. Coach Chapman, what up, Coach? Coach says, please play Hancock. I don't think he's ready from a processing standpoint, from an angle standpoint, from the way he's seeing the game standpoint. But, it's hard to... The biggest deterrent for me wanting to say, like, Hancock should play is what kind of floor is he offering? But you could make the case that the floor that the safeties are offering right now isn't really that great. So why not throw Hancock in there and get him some time on task and see what you can do with the athleticism and the juice that he brings? I just think there's no good answer. You could play Hancock. There's still worries and questions there. You could play Rapp. There's worries and questions. You could play Bishop. There's worries and questions. You could play Poyer. It's frustrating. I put out a tweet earlier today. Like, I feel like the Bills had such good safety play for so long that it angered the football gods. And now they are where they are because of that. It's just... It's frustrating to see where the safety group has gone. But to each their own. We'll see what happens. The next piece. So we talked a little bit about some elements of the defense. I want to mention a quick one on, where is it? I have to find it. Yeah, there it is. So how did I officially title this here? No, that's not what I want. Get this out of my way from my notes. I have like 90 screens open. That's my fault. The running backs in the passing game. This is a potential fix, but also a focus. I think how the Bills use their running backs has been found out a little bit by defenses. This ties into a larger thing, I think, with Joe Brady, where the Bills offense is getting into their tendency a bit too much, getting into a little bit of too much predictability from a formation, alignment, and concept standpoint. But when targeting running backs, I wanted to put this out there. We've talked about it since Joe Brady took over. This goes back to his days at LSU. This goes to his time with the Panthers. He's very adept at using his running backs in the pass game, getting them in space, getting them advantageous matchups, getting them clean, like looks on mesh rail, things like that, right? He's been very good at that since the beginning. Not so much this year. So the Buffalo Bills, when targeting running backs this year, 2025, versus last year, 2024. In 2024, they led the league in EPA per target when targeting their running backs at positive 0.60. First in the league. That's tremendous. Having a plus 0.6 EPA per target is amazing. And they were also third in success rate when targeting running backs at 56.1. So very good at targeting their running backs last year, which makes sense, right? Getting the ball to James Cook, ball to Ty Johnson, ball to Ray Davis, sometimes in structure, sometimes out of structure. This year, their EPA per target, two running backs, negative 0.23, which is 26th in the league. So they went from plus 0.6 last year to negative 0.23. And they went from first last year to 26th right now. Their success rate, again, 56.1 last year, third in the league. This year it's 28%, which is 31st in the league. A big piece that I've noticed this year when it comes to getting the running backs involved in the pass game, and I mentioned it a minute earlier, Bills run mesh a bunch under Joe Brady, and they love to run mesh rail. Sorry, as I keep putting my hand here to adjust the camera, but I don't know why it keeps going in and out of focus. It's driving me absolutely insane. I think it's because I'm moving too much here. Mesh rail. If you don't know what it is, essentially you're getting over the middle of the field. You will get two. K. Maury says, "Yay, we aren't last positivity." You'll get that underneath drag route, that underneath shallow. You'll get one above it, kind of trying to create that rub and that friction between two defenders if it's man coverage. So you'll get those overs, those drags across the middle, and then usually get an over the ball route from somebody else. What the Bills love to do is they'll take the running back with that and they'll send him on that wheel out of the backfield or that rail route right out of the backfield. And that running back, he's the first read. He is the number one in the progression. The Bills go to that a lot. They've hit Cook on it. They've hit Johnson on it. They hit Ray Davis on it. Sometimes they'll get coverage busts. Sometimes defenses will go too far over the top, trying to get through the garbage and the traffic to get to it. And Allen will spit it out right away. And it's an easy 6 or 7 yards or a play to the running back. But this year, defenses are all over that. They are covering that rail route from the running back. Allen is not able to hit it. Allen is not able to get to it. And that was a significant part of what they did last year with getting the ball to the running backs. You're just not seeing that same availability with the running backs on mesh rail this year. And by extension, that's impacting their numbers and the running back targets and the running back attempts in the air and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I think you need to get the running backs more involved in the pass game, especially James Cook, especially when you are struggling with health at the outside spots with wide receiver or Dalton Kincaid is down. Like last night should have been an opportunity. Okay, let's get our running backs involved in the pass game as much as we can. But it was just like, no, we're just going to run mesh rail and it's not available and it's not there. I am worried a bit about that. I think it ties into more of the pass game being found out a little bit, the run game being found out a little bit. I don't think I am, sorry, this is driving me absolutely insane. I don't think that I am some amazing ball knower or football person, but when I'm able to watch a Bills game and I can see a formation or a down and distance or situation, and I'm like, oh, here comes this run. Oh, here comes this pass concept. I would bet NFL defenses are able to do that and probably way better than I am and probably even more than I am. So I'm a little worried that the offense is getting found out a little bit. And yeah, last night, I see the comment here from Josh who says they also need to use James Cook the way the Falcons use Bijan. Bijan is more of a unicorn than Cook, but Cook can definitely do more in the pass game than he's getting the opportunity to do, which is a little frustrating. And yeah, especially in a game like last night where Palmer goes down, Kincaid's already down, you're struggling in these areas. The Falcons are just teeing off with the blitz. It would have been nice to kind of, let's move James Cook around a little bit. Let's get James Cook involved as a pass catcher. Instead of, the Falcons kind of blitzing, dictating the matchup there, dictating protection. You're not really forcing them out of it or making them kind of account for anything. A little frustrating. Oh, thank you very much, Autumn. I appreciate you. Yeah, I made sure to get the tree in there. What's driving me nuts now is that the camera has gone out of focus. It's driving me absolutely insane. I don't know why it's gone out of focus. I don't know what it's focusing on instead of it's driving me absolutely insane. I almost can't focus. I want to shut down the stream right now because I'm absolutely frustrated with it. Yeah, but I think the pass game has gotten found out a little bit and the offense is getting found out a little bit as well. That ties into a little bit for the defense as well. I think there is some predictability for the Bills defense with their coverages, with the type of fronts that they use. Atlanta did a lot of what Miami does where, hey, we're just going to send a bunch of different motions, move the second level, attack the weak side, attack the B gap bubble, have numbers advantage, or have a hat on a hat, know that the Bills aren't going to win battles up front and win one-on-one and just attack. I think there are some issues with being predictable and being found out a little bit on both sides of the ball when it comes to Nick says the camera got paid off by the motorcyclist. But there we go. I guess I just need to sit up. Okay. And I'm going to try and not move at all because it finally came back into focus. I feel so much better. That's very funny, Nick. I like you with that. The camera got paid off by the motorcyclist. Yeah. The predictability a little bit of Cecil says maybe the lights on the tree. No, because I think the tree is at the same depth that I normally keep it at previously. But I don't think it's the lights. I think it's me. Maybe not. I can just make sure I sit still. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of, both sides of the ball getting found out a little bit. And again, it's early. It's week 6. We'll see what they do coming out of the bye. This is the time to course correct. This is the time to kind of adjust a little bit. But you also don't want to put your entire self out on display before you get to the playoffs. And potentially need those, things that you kept in the bag a little bit then. So we'll see. But I do think there are some issues with the offense being found out a little bit. David says, the tree is coming from depth and missing a tackle on the camera. Well done. A+, David. Wow, the chat is on fire tonight. I'm enjoying this. Bob says it's the cat. Look at the eyes. They are pretty creepy. I think that cat's adorable with his little witch hat and his pumpkin. But yeah, the eyes are a little scary. That's fair. I think they've got to change some things up on both sides of the ball from a predictability standpoint and an identity standpoint. Just, again, it doesn't have to be a full-scale overhaul. They're not redesigning the wheel, but you need some tweaks. You need something to kind of throw a wrench into, here comes they're in this, here comes this. Oh, they're in this. It's either going to be A or B. We can attack both. Or, it's going to be 70% of A. Let's play for A. And kind of just getting into that mold. It is a bit frustrating to watch. And I think health is going to play a big one for both of these sides of the ball. Starting on the offensive side, getting healthier at the pass catching options. I'm interested to see what that does for this offense as a whole. They really leaned on James Cook early, kind of haven't the past several weeks. That's also, I wonder if that's why. Are they not trying to get him involved in the pass too much because they've been running him a lot and they want to keep him fresh or they want to keep him healthy? But, if you do want to win games still, and so in case of emergency, break glass and release James Cook as a pass catcher a little bit, if possible. I'm interested to see how those things kind of coalesce into one going forward. And then on the defensive side, yeah, how much does Hoyt change things? I don't think they're going to become a completely different defense with Michael Hoyt back, but can they use him like the Rams did? Do we get him in that type of spinner role? Do we get him in that cheetah package that we got with the Rams where you're running these overload fronts and it's just all pass rushers and headhunters that are on the field on third down? Now, in order to get to those situations, you got to win against the run on first and second down, which is also a problem. I'm going to mention that briefly now because I don't think it's something that can be fixed. The Bills are going to keep getting gashed and they're going to keep getting blown off the ball on the interior. They are just not built to defend the run on the inside. They are built to stop the run with game script, forcing their opponents away from the run, and or gapping out and using bodies. They're having issues defending the run from too high structures. They are having issues with gap integrity between the second level and the first level up front. They are having issues with guys getting off blocks. They're just not built to stop the run like that. They're going to have to win with run blitzes, numbers, and game script. That's going to be messy. And it comes with its own set of risk and reward, little live by the sword, die by the sword type of deal. But that's the bet they made, and they got to lie in it. But I'm hoping if they can get to some more known passing down and distance and situations, you can unleash Michael Hoyt and some new schematics potentially. Ogunjobi should help with the pass rush. I think he's not going to help too much from a run defense standpoint. He's going to get blown off the ball. And then we'll see what happens at linebacker. How hurt is Bernard? Does Milano come back? Dorian is still getting lost at times. Shaq Thompson has been largely their best linebacker all year, which is awesome for him, but also, and a feather in his cap, but also probably not what you want to hear or see if you're the Bills or a Bills fan. But yeah, that run defense, I think, is going to continue to be a struggle, is going to continue to be worrisome. I think it's going to be something that we continue to talk about all year, just like it was last year and even the year before. But I think a lot of the turnovers and the game script glossed over the fact that the Bills struggled against a run last year, and it kind of really wasn't paid attention to too much. Another piece I wanted to bring up here, something to focus on, somebody who asked this question. There it is. The question is, has our offensive line taken a step back this year? And I wanted to bring that up because I tweeted this out earlier. In 2024, so last year, regular season and playoffs, Josh Allen was sacked 19 times, and he had a pressure to sack rate of 9%. This year, through 6 games, he's already been sacked 12 times, and he has a pressure to sack rate of 16.4%, which would be the third highest rate of his career and the highest since 2019, which was his second year in the league. Bills are struggling a little bit in pass pro. Allen is not making the mutant plays back there where he's stiff-arming dudes and shaking guys and, avoiding pressures being turned into sacks. He's also holding the ball a little bit longer because guys aren't necessarily getting open. The pressures turning into sacks and blitzes being able to get to the Bills is a little worrisome. I don't think Allen is diagnosing things to a high standard pre-snap or post-snap. I think athleticism and juice is giving the Bills offensive line problems up front. And I think the lack of having true and declarative separators on at wide receiver, I should say, that's also kind of adding into things too. So the offense has struggled a bit these past several weeks. And, you're seeing Allen get pressured. You're seeing pressures turn into sacks. You're seeing him have to hold on to the ball. Some of that's the offensive line. Some of that is Josh Allen. Some of that is the weapons, which, again, makes this more of a focus than it is a fix. I don't think this is a thing where it's like all they have to do is this one thing and ta-da, everything's fine. I don't think the O-line has taken a step back, but I do think the O-line play is one of several factors that's leading to Allen getting pressured more and Allen getting sacked more, which, again, is something we really haven't seen the past couple of years. The offensive line was so much better 2 years ago. They switched it up last year with a new combination, and they didn't miss a beat and actually probably improved. And this year, we're seeing some struggles. We saw the Saints get after Allen. We saw the Pats get after Allen. We saw the Falcons get after Allen, but just more with bodies and scheme. Also, too, like them not being able to account for Caden Ellis as that off-ball dude and everything that was going from there. Like, it was just, that's a little worrisome. I mentioned it last week in the episode of kind of like sorting out the real problems versus the fake ones, noting that it was something to watch with how the Patriots front gave the Bills offensive line problems. The game against the Falcons is a little worrisome. Still, especially when you get into the predictability realm where you can't just people move. You can't just run the ball. That's been the Bills' easy button. Let's just get some push. Let's run the ball. We'll be good to go. Done and dusted, right? If you can't run the ball, then it becomes tight. Then you get into these 3rd and longs. You have defenses with the ability to game up their pass protection, just like the Ravens did to them last year in the regular season, just like the Texans did to them in the regular season last year. And then you pair that with guys not being able to create separation, not being able to win outside, Allen not having time to get to longer developing routes. It's kind of this, perpetual cycle of blah, and that's concerning. I don't know if they necessarily can fix it. They'd have to add a weapon at wide receiver. They'd have to start to build more of a threat outside from their wide receivers and deep, kind of push defenses off a little bit, change how defenses attack them. Allen's going to have to show that he can beat the blitz when it comes. The offensive line's going to have to show they can give him time. Yeah, they're kind of getting into some worrisome trends these past couple of weeks, but they have done that in this parts of the season the past couple of years, and they've always found a way to pull themselves out. So we will see when it comes to that. Going through some comments here. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns from you folks? If anybody's wondering, I got through the Bills defensive tape today. I'll be posting more stuff on socials tomorrow on that and giving some overall final thoughts. I have to get to the offense later tonight and tomorrow. Film will be happening tomorrow, breaking down that. So got a lot more to get through still. The game being on a Monday and the show being on a Tuesday is always frustrating, but shout out to the Bills for getting primetime games. Swin says, our team's blitzing more because they don't think our receivers can get open. I think that's one aspect of it. I think teams blitzing and teams, playing more man or just single high. I think a lot of it comes down to you're trying to attack the run, right? So sometimes pass blitzes are really run blitzes, but if you pass the ball when someone brings a run blitz, it's just charted as a pass and a blitz. But I think teams are attacking the Bills' run game with coverage structure and blitzes. And I think they're able to do so. I shouldn't say able to do so, but they're doing that because of how good the Bills' run game is, and it's a top priority to stop it. But also going a little hand in hand with that is that I don't think they fear the Bills' pass catchers on the outside or deep. I don't think they're in a spot where it's like, oh, we got to watch out for this dude. We got to throw a double over there. We're not comfortable playing this dude one-on-one or, in single on an island out there. Yeah, I think it's so. I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's more tied to their identity and their run game, but I do think it is tied to that a little bit as well. So that's a fair question and fair point. Buff Bills 83 says trade for Olave. I would absolutely love a trade for Olave. It's tough. It's tough. Cecil says, and you can bet the Panthers and Chiefs are studying these last 2 games, so more blitzes are coming. Especially with Spags. Good times. Coach Chapman says, I feel like it's more of scheme issues. I don't see the easy button passes that were there last year. Brady is getting predictable, and he's not leaning into Cook. I think it's a very fair point. It's something I mentioned during the Miami game, that the more that the Bills are unable to push the ball downfield or win outside, the more that they're relying on just underneath or the low intermediate in the pass or running the football. Defenses are going to keep creeping up. Defenses are going to keep restricting space, and they're going to make life tough for this offense, and everything will get further and further condensed and further, tighter for this offense and a bit more sluggish. And a lot of those easy button passes last year were from a numbers perspective. It was underneath. It was a quick, okay, numbers are in the box to stop the run. Cool. We got a pass tag attached to it. Let me spit it out to Shakir because we got 3 versus 2 outside, or we got 3 versus 2 and we have angles in space. Let's take advantage with that. Or defense drop deep. They're really trying to sell out to put a cap on things. So let me just check it down for an easy 6 or 7 yards. Now there's less of that because guys are creeping up. There's more guys. And when you're looking on the broadcast, there's more guys in that horizontal frame because they're not scared of getting beat outside. They're not scared of getting beat over the top. They're playing the run and they're playing with numbers and they're playing with confidence, not getting feared or not getting fearful of what the Bills could do on the outside or with that pass game. So a couple passes here or there, a couple shots could change things a little bit, but we'll see. I like to follow up for Coach Tappan, who says, it's a little similar to pre-Cooper Bills last year. Cooper was more of a threat than a weapon. And this follow-up comment too here that says that single high was happening right before we traded for Cooper. Absolutely. It's going to happen in general because the Bills can run the ball so well. So if you're in single high, you have an extra body in and around the box and the line of scrimmage, that helps you, have numbers against the run. But in conjunction with that, when you're playing single high, if it's man, obviously your corners outside are in one-on-one. But even if it's cover three, so again, single high, just zone, your corners are still essentially on an island outside. And if you're not fearful of the wide receivers out there, or if the Bills aren't throwing it out there and working outside or deep, you can continue to live in those single high structures without a lot of fear. And then you can sit at certain depths and play the low intermediate to the underneath or play certain routes because the whole menu isn't available to them or you're not scared of that whole menu happening. And so it really kind of reared its head last year in the Ravens game and in the Texans game, similar to kind of what happened with the Patriots this year, right? And I hate to keep saying this because it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back and I'm not, but I said it last year. I said it this year. Teams with good and or athletic corners are going to be able to play single high and cover the Bills one-on-one on the outside. The Pats did it with Gonzalez and Davis. The Ravens did it last year with Wiggins and even Stevens to a degree, but also Humphrey. The Texans did it because they have Stingley on one side and Lassiter on the other. Like teams with good corners are just going to play single high and bet that their guys can lock up the Bills guys on the outside, and then they can play the run with bodies and numbers in the box. That's my fear of why I said you need to be able to win deep. You need to be able to get some shot plays and some chunk plays because you have to get teams out of single high a little bit, or you could get them in a single high. That's fine. You got to go play action. You take advantage of Dalton Kincaid on some crossers. You got to use him as that mismatch creator, I should say, against safeties, against linebackers, take advantage of it that way. But even then, that starts to, again, shrink the field, shrink your operating space, and kind of build tendency even further. But yeah, I expect the single high thing is going to continue, especially if Cooper is out. The only way it's going to go away is if the Bills start to really win outside and vertical. And I don't see that happening. And even if it does to that degree, their run game is still going to be priority for defenses. So you're still going to see a lot of single high. But yeah, that's what I've talked about. Even though their run game is great and you're forcing defenses out of the too high structure, it's not this too high structure kind of putting a cap on everything. It's these single high structures with good or athletic corners locking guys down. The Bills have to find answers elsewhere, which they have at times, right? They do have some man beaters. I think Palmer can do that in the underneath and the intermediate. I think Kincaid is a mismatch against linebackers and safeties. It's just a matter of getting to that consistently and tying that in with some scheme pieces as well. But it creates, again, this kind of never-ending cycle or perpetuating cycle or never-ending story or kind of a snake chasing its tail or eating its own tail type of deal. Not great, but we'll see. Well, there was a comment. Matthew says, is there any way we could do anything this season to start stopping the run with the players still on the roster? Yes, you have to win with numbers and run blitz the same way they did last year. They're going to have to gap out. They're going to have to play more single high. They're going to have to spin a safety down on the snap or line up with a safety in the box pre-snap. They're going to have to win with numbers because I just don't see the players on the roster the way they're built, this team. I don't think they have enough guys who are stout to anchor and mitigate displacement and or get off blocks and win consistently to disrupt the run. So if you can't win individually, you're going to have to win with numbers. And that's kind of where they are, unfortunately, which is the same spot they were in last year. So, which is frustrating, but fortunately it kind of is what it is. Injuries. We talked about the defense. I like this comment here saying Deion Walker's flashes are amazing, but his lows are still low. Absolutely. He's had some really nice flashes, very positive, but he's still a work in progress. And I think a lot of his works in progress are being glossed over a little bit there. Any other further Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, feel free, everyone, to get them into the chat as I talk about the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pie Pizza. If you don't know, One Pie Pizza is sincerely the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I don't say that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I think they are the best. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, a great cheese to sauce ratio, homemade blue cheese. If you get a multitude of toppings, they'll chop them up, sprinkle them evenly across the pie. They have an awesome pizza named after the show and the brand. They do a bunch of breakfast pizzas. They have a bunch of great salads, and just everything they have is sincerely delicious. You should get yourself some One Pie Pizza. If you want to know, hey, what's on the pizza named after the brand? First off, it's called the Cover One Allen Goat. It's got homemade red sauce, goat cheese, chicken fingers, mozzarella cheese, red onion, and bacon. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you live in Buffalo, get yourself some One Pie Pizza. If you're visiting Buffalo, get yourself some One Pie Pizza. They also have a catering division called Elevated Catering of Buffalo. If you're doing an event, get them to do an event for you. I've had them do multiple for me over the past couple of years, and every time I've done it, it's been absolutely great. Just a ton of good dishes. I get some pizzas with them as well, but they do chicken and rice dishes. They do mac and cheese. They do a variety of mac and cheese. Like everything they do sincerely is great. And they're good people on top of it with all the initiatives and drives and things they do for the city and the community at large here, including the Toys for Tots drive that will be coming up soon that I will have more details for as we go forward. So shout out to One Pie Pizza, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I'm going to throw up the banners as Toodles, folks, because we're going to start to wind down here. Cecil says, if you're visiting from NYC, bring some pizza with you when you visit. Man, I wish I could travel with One Pie Pizza. That'd be amazing. I would travel with it everywhere I go. So I don't think, again, Bills are 0-2, obviously the last 2 weeks. I don't think the wheels have fallen off. I don't think this team is doomed. I do think they have some flaws. I do think they have some vulnerability. It depends on what verbiage you equate to each word or, how you want to use each verbiage, right? Like flaws, deficiencies, vulnerabilities, any of those things. They do have those, and to whatever degree, you use each of those words. I do think they have some flaws and or deficiencies and or vulnerabilities. The run defense is still going to be an issue. I don't think they can fix that as much. The coverage issue, from a zone standpoint, I think they can fix it from being more technically sound and fundamentally sound, but I think they could fix it a little bit with more man coverage and more match elements. I don't think they can go true man consistently because I don't think they have the bodies for it. Thank you so much, Arthur. And you got me with it. Arthur, thank you very much for being here and being a consistent commenter and for the super chat donation. Arthur says, Ant, thank you very much for the show. These are always fun and informative. I know you don't like to post compliments, but I also know you respect the monetary donation. Played me against myself. Well done. Well done. Cheers to you. Thank you so much for that. Sincerely. I appreciate the kind words and the comment and the super chat and for you being here in general, Arthur. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So coverage, I think they can fix that a little bit by getting away from true spot drop zone, but that comes with its own set of risk and reward. That means you're playing some man. That means you're playing more match coverage, rules-based coverage. That means you could have communication issues or complexity issues on the back end. So that comes with its own set of worries. The pass game being found out a little bit, that's a little scary. Predictability on both the defense and offense, that's a little scary. Injuries, we'll see what that can kind of do to this team a little bit and make things up. Pop says, in what ways do you see Hoyt helping? I see Hoyt helping from a mismatch creation standpoint. You can align him on the edge on early downs. You can put him over the center or in the A gaps on pass rushing downs. You can line him as an off-ball linebacker. You can blitz him. You can spike him on games. You can loop him. You can drop him into coverage every once in a while. I think you really do kind of have a mini chess piece with him mixed with physicality and violence, which is pretty awesome. So I see him helping just from a schematic perspective in terms of mismatch creation, protection, dictation, protection rules, breaking and disruption, and some fun creative looks, hopefully, ideally, with him. There was also one. Aaron says, play action. Why are we not running it much more? I ask this every year, and now I'm starting to think it's just that Josh Allen doesn't like play action. I don't know, because it just seems like an absolute given that if you have a really good run game, you should run play action and use that to generate explosives and chunk plays. And it feels like their play action game should be used more frequently and or should be better. But alas, we're kind of just in the same spot as we were last year. Matthew says, did Landon Jackson play yesterday? I thought I saw his jersey. He did play yesterday. Those are my only thoughts. He did play. He did play. He did play. So yeah, I don't think everything is on fire. I don't think everything is terrible. We'll see what this team looks like coming out of the bye week. Bye weeks are traditionally very important to teams. These are your opportunities to self-scout, course correct, and we'll see how much of that course correction and that self-scouting aligns with guys coming back from suspension, guys getting healthier. We'll see what happens. But I do think, again, I don't think this team is in trouble or in dire straits, but they do have flaws. They do have vulnerabilities. They do have deficiencies. They do need to clean them up. I don't think they can all be cleaned up because I think a good chunk of them are tied to the personnel on this roster and who they've built this roster out of from a body type standpoint and an archetype standpoint. And until they change that, that's the larger picture in a conversation for a whole nother episode. The schematics are what the schematics are. They can tweak those to a degree, but a lot of them are tied to the body types and the archetypes that they choose to bring in to this defense, and then it becomes a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario. So we'll see what this team can be going forward. I really appreciate everybody who tuned in to this episode live here on this Tuesday night. If you have not already, please, 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 and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this content in any way, shape, or form, please drop a like on this video. It goes a sincerely long way for myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears here on this channel. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage on the audio platforms. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about this show if you enjoyed this content. If you hated this content, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show. Matthew followed up and asked if Landon Jackson did anything. Joey hit it on the head when he said Landon Jackson. Those are my only thoughts. And then a whole bunch of ha-has made me spit my drink. Yeah, that was my answer, Matthew. You know, when you asked if he did anything, he played. I think he had like a night. He played. But he's still learning. He's a healthy scratch when they're full tilt for a reason. But we'll see what his trajectory continues to look like. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, sorry, Matthew. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. I appreciate the kind words that came in for me throughout this episode. Thank you very much, Arthur, to you for your super chat and the kind words from you and everyone else. I sincerely appreciate them. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night, folks. Or Cecil, for you, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday morning because you're hours ahead. So enjoy that. I appreciate you, folks. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. Rate, review, subscribe, drop likes, word of mouth, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate you, folks. I will see you tomorrow for an episode of The Film Room. I will see you next Tuesday live, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we will have more of this background filled out in the new place. Thank you very much. I see more of the kind words coming in. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your night or your day if you are Cecil, since it's 3:30 a.m. where he is. I appreciate you, folks, sincerely more than you will ever possibly know. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And yeah, I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I will see you when I see you. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.